Hello everyone, it's Silver. This is Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. So, usually when it comes to remakes of beloved old JRPGs, I tend to directly compare them to the original because I've been a fan of RPGs like this for a really long time and I'm super old. So I've played a lot of the original games that are being remade now. This one, however, is a little bit different because I've never actually played the original Romancing Saga 2. It came out in Japan in like 1993, so I was 1 year old when it came out, so it was a bit early. But yeah, this is a full remake of that classic game, and it's a really solid remake, by the way, because there's a lot going on here, but it's also very faithful to the original, despite, of course, being entirely 3D now, which is very different. Although the loading screen, the progress bar thingy, it actually shows the old 2D sprites from the original game, which is a cute little touch. But this game stands out in memory as being a very unique JRPG because it's extremely non-linear and it has a really interesting way of doing things. But the first thing to notice is that even though when you first start the game you will create a character in a character creator, it's pretty simple, but you can create a character in it, and then you will proceed to not play as that character that you just created for a long time. There's a reason for that, which I'll get into later, but basically in this game you're not actually playing as a singular character as much as you're playing as an entire empire. Because the idea here is you're playing several generations of people, emperors and empresses of this empire, and they are using this inheritance magic. That means the next one in line inherits all of the memories and experiences and everything of the previous several emperors and empresses. So as you go, they just get stronger and stronger as they get more and more lifetimes of experience layered on them. And the way that it works is you will play as a specific emperor that you choose from all the various different classes that you've got unlocked so far. You can unlock a lot of them as the game goes on. I believe there are somewhere around 30 of them, including 2 new ones for the remake, I believe. But every class has their own starting stats as well as their own experiences for each type of weapon and magic and all that good stuff, and you pick one to be your emperor or empress and they inherit all the previous stats that you've gathered from all the other ones so far, and then you gather a retinue of 4 other characters from all the ones that you didn't choose. All the various classes that you didn't choose to be the main character you can choose to have in your party. And each class is represented by an NPC that will have a certain kind of naming theme for each generation. They'll have some sort of like palette swaps of each class with different names that represent that class's progression across the generations, which is a pretty cool way of doing things. And you just make a retinue of 5 total people and go on adventures in the world. After a certain number of quests or hitting big milestones and things like that, there'll be a big time skip, usually anywhere from like 80 to 140 years or so. It's a really big one. And then you'll choose the next person in line in your next retinue and continue on like that. Unless, of course, you finally reach 4 of the 7 defeated heroes. There are 7 heroes to defeat. More on that in a minute. Once you've gotten down 4 of them, you will then switch to your last emperor, the final one in line. And this is the character that you created at the beginning of the game. So the final emperor, this is the one that you spend like the whole end game playing as. Basically, it's actually quite a large chunk of the game. And from this point, you can no longer do the inheritance stuff. It's all about this one final one. This means that earlier in the game, there's actually not a game over screen per se, because if you die, if you lose all of your characters in battle, you just hit a time skip and switch to the next emperor in line. But you can also choose to abdicate if you want to early on, if you want to switch emperors for any reason. But of course, you lose that capability once you reach the final emperor. And the progression here is extremely non-linear. You're given a few basic guidelines of what you're meant to be doing as an empire, and then it's up to you to just kind of go. Just go out into the world and decide what you want to do, who you want to help, and continue throughout there. Your main goals are to defeat the 7 heroes and to annex a bunch of territories to make your empire larger. As you go through various quest lines, you'll find that eventually you'll get into new territories that are not owned by the Empire yet, and once you complete enough quests there and solve all the problems, they will happily add themselves to your empire, and that's how you annex new territories. And of course, there are lots of other kinds of quests that you can come up against to do various things, including a lot of quests that unlock new peoples for your empire, new classes. Basically, you unlock new classes that you can play as or add to your retinue by completing various quest lines throughout the world to make those classes sort of adhere to the Empire's beliefs. Effectively, you're trying to recruit people from all over the world. But notably, you are a nice empire, not the classical tyrannical empire of most JRPGs. You are a kind empire that annexes people but doesn't take over their cities and stuff. And as for an overarching story, the game has kind of a couple things going at once, but the main one is about the 7 heroes. Because, well, you're fighting them, so why are they heroes? Well, the idea is that the 7 heroes once saved a world. They saved this world, however, by using some forbidden magics that eventually turned them into monsters, and now that they're here in this world, they are looking to sort of take everything over and to sort of secure revenge for what happened to them and why they ended up the way that they are, hence the subtitle of the game. And as you explore in different areas, sometimes in large open field areas or sometimes in dungeons, you'll find this sort of blue sparkly trail that will lead you around to like a hard to reach area of wherever you are. And once you reach the end of the trail, there'll be this glowing blue disc that you can touch, and it will give you a memory of what happened to the Seven and what led them to be here and all that stuff. There are 15 of these plate thingies that you can find that will give you a complete story as to why they're here. However, the main thing that you're going to be doing while exploring and stuff is, of course, the combat. This is a very combat-heavy JRPG, so it needs to have a good combat system, and luckily it very much does. It is a turn-based combat system where you and the enemies take turns wailing on each other, but there's quite a lot going on here. There's quite a lot to it. For one, these Saga games use techs, and these are basically like skills, active skills. And these are tied to all the different various weapon types that you can equip. And there are no levels in this game, by the way. There's no leveling system. Instead, your strength increases in a very different way. Every time you win a battle, you get TP, technical points. And these are distributed to your party in a couple of different categories. For one, the HP and BP, which is like MP sort of, you use it for all of your techs and stuff, these will increase over time. So your health and mana, effectively, will earn these points just by participating in battles, and will slowly get better and better as you go through the game. So the main way of making your characters able to survive more damage and use more attacks and stuff is simply to battle with them. And the more battles they're in, the more these stats will go up. But also, these points will be distributed to any weapon and spell types they used during the battle. So if you've got someone using a bunch of axe skills, then when the battle's over, they'll gain axe experience. And if they're using a whole bunch of fire magic, then their fire magic will go up and stuff like that. It's just all about what you use directly. And as you go through battles, you will just increase the skill levels of all these various techniques, and a higher skill level will unlock new techs of that type. So as your axe skill goes up, you'll get more and more advanced axe techs to use in battle. But you don't get them just suddenly. Instead, you have to glimmer them, which is a very Saga thing to do. Glimmering is when a light bulb appears above your character's head and they learn something new on the spot. So sometimes you'll see a little light bulb symbol next to one of your techs, and that means that tech can currently glimmer into something new. But there's only a chance of it happening. The chance is higher if you're fighting stronger enemies. So if your skill level with that weapon type is high enough and you have the right techs unlocked already, then the ones you have can glimmer into new ones. Sometimes this little light bulb symbol will be glowing, like pulsing. That means it's a lot more likely to happen, usually because you have a really high skill level and you're pretty much ready to learn it right then. So if it's pulsing like that, that means you're probably just about to learn something new. Whereas if it's not pulsing and it's just a light bulb, there's like a small chance that you might learn something new. And this is how you actually increase your repertoire of abilities, just by glimmering all these new attacks, by using the attacks you already know and unlocking more on basically like a flowchart kind of as you go down these skill levels and get more and more advanced stuff. Spells, however, work a little bit differently. You do not glimmer new spells by using them. You, of course, increase the skill level by using them, but instead, you will sometimes glimmer a new spell if you have enough of a skill level in that type once the battle is over. You don't do it in the battle itself like you do for the other attacks. Instead, you just have to use, say, a fire spell, and then maybe you'll learn a new fire spell once the combat is over, depending on your fire skill level. However, you also have some buildings that you can build in your kingdom. You need a lot of money for these, like millions of gold, but once you build these buildings, they allow you to do things like, say, go to the training hall, register techs that you've learned at the training hall, and now for all future generations, you can pick from all the techs you've previously learned as other characters and teach them those immediately so you don't have to glimmer them all from the start again. Also, the same thing works for spells in the Incantations Lab. There are also now synthesized spells, which are spells that use two elements at the same time. These have to be learned by researching them. You have to find scrolls that will teach you one of these spells, and then go back to your Incantation Lab, spend some money to research the spell, and then after a certain amount of time passes, usually like several combat encounters or a time skip, whichever comes first, then you will learn the new spells, and you can teach them to anyone that has the requisite magic skill levels. Glimmering attack in battle is always nice because when you glimmer it the first time, you cast it for free. Instead of using BP, it'll just cast it for free for the first time. And you do have a limited number of techs that you're able to keep at once, so sometimes you'll have to switch them out depending on what you want to learn or what you want to keep active right now and things. You won't be able to have every single weapon tech that is unlockable all at once. You gotta pick and choose, but you still have quite a few in a list that you can pick from. And all these skill levels will carry over between generations. So say if you've got a male light infantry, one of their best skill levels is in greatswords. So if you get their greatsword skill up to 30 and then you do a time skip, then that means the next male light infantry member that you can recruit after the time skip will have a minimum of 30 greatsword skill. And it'll just keep getting higher as you keep using all these classes. So it encourages you to always have a different retinue every single time that you play, because it means that you're overall increasing the strength of the Empire's various classes all at once and building them all up. There's also a really important weakness system. You'll see a lot of symbols below enemies' names and health gauges in battle, and those are their weaknesses. And you simply find weaknesses by hitting them with stuff until it says they're weak to it. That the first time you hit them with something they're weak to, it'll point it out to you. And there are also some abilities that other classes can learn that will reveal some weaknesses and things in battle, but the most reliable way to do it is to just poke them and see what they're weak to over time. This means that either synthesized spells or elemental weapon skills are the best for testing for weaknesses, because they're multiple things at once, so you test for multiple weaknesses at the same time. It's a really efficient way to do it. And you want to hit these weaknesses for a couple of reasons. For one, they just do way more damage, so you always want to be hitting weaknesses whenever you can. But also the overdrive gauge, that big blue gauge at the bottom right of the screen, this is super important in the more difficult battles. These are for union attacks. This is kind of a Saga thing as well, where it will combine the name of multiple texts together, and you'll have multiple characters act at the same time and pull off empowered versions of their text on enemies in a big combo. And hitting weaknesses fills this gauge, as well as hitting criticals. Any sort of critical attack will fill it too. And once it's full, you can go over to the United Attack tab in your character's windows there, and it'll have a list of a couple of sort of team-up attacks that they can perform with other characters that have yet to take their turns. And you choose one that looks good to you, and off it goes. The attacks that are used will be used for free, and they'll be more powerful than they normally are. And as the hit count goes up, a damage multiplier also increases to make them even stronger. At first, you'll only start out with the ability to do two-person united attacks, where just two people combine forces and attack. However, as you annex more territories, you'll unlock various gameplay mechanics, and one of those is to have 3- and 4-person united attacks eventually once you have enough territories. However, these have to be done in sequence, so once you get the 3-person attack, you can't always do it. You have to do the 2-person attack first, and then it'll switch to a 3-person attack the next time the gauge is filled in that same combat, and the same goes for the 4-person one. So you'll always start out with a 2-person one no matter what, but in longer and more difficult fights where you're hitting lots of weaknesses and filling this gauge multiple times, you can get more and more advanced attack combos going. There are loads and loads of dungeons to delve through, so you'll be doing lots of combat. There are also lots of big open field areas that have lots of enemies too. And the boss fights are pretty involved in this game because of that weakness and overdrive system. There's a lot to consider in a boss fight. And when it comes to the big story bosses, the 7 heroes themselves, those are way more involved. They're much more difficult than other bosses in the game, and they're usually like 2 or 3 phases and have all sorts of extra mechanics and stuff added to them, so they can be really challenging. There's also the ley line system to consider. When you use enough skills and spells of a certain element, a ley line of that element can appear. And this will empower skills and spells of that same element, as well as causing certain enemies to heal if they're sort of that elemental type. There are also some characters that can learn passive abilities that let them heal under specific elemental ley lines. But these are usually for enemies more than you, honestly, and you don't want them most of the time. You have to counteract a ley line by casting spells and skills of its opposite element. So if you've got a water ley line going, you cast fire stuff and it will tame it down and eventually eliminate it. However, if it keeps getting fed water energy, it'll turn into an astral ley line. These are really bad. You do not want these. These are featured in pretty much all of these 7 heroes boss fights. An astral ley line will heal the enemies that are healed by that element for thousands of HP per turn, usually healing them more than you can actually damage them in that same amount of time, and it will also drastically empower their skills. So you really need to be able to tame down and eventually eliminate these ley line effects in order to actually have a chance at the more difficult bosses. And this is one of the big reasons you want a large variety of different kinds of techs in your party, because you have all sorts of different elements to choose from, and you have a lot of tools for different situations once you've done this, so that you can fight against various different types of ley lines and things. There's all sorts of gear that you can find by exploring. You also have a smithy that allows you to develop gear from certain materials and money and time. And the first developed gear piece is free. Well, free, I say. It costs a lot to develop something, but it's given to you once it is done developing. At least one of them is. And after a time skip, you'll be able to buy more from other shops throughout the world. Basically, the idea is that after a time skip that's been long enough for that new piece of equipment to sort of proliferate throughout the world and become purchasable. You'll also find that there are some pieces of equipment that can be brought to the smithy and upgraded to a plus version of themselves, which will be stronger. Also, some equipment has a glimmerable skill contained within it, so as long as you're equipped with that weapon, you'll be able to glimmer that skill, but only while you're equipped with it. So even once you've learned it, if you unequip the weapon, you will lose it. So the downside is that you need that weapon equipped to use the skills that are within the weapons, but the upside is they don't count towards your limit of learnable techs. So you can still have a full list of techs plus the weapon one and not have it be too many. I really also like how a lot of the classes in this game are not human. Like, there are lots of human classes, but there are also like beastmen and stuff that you can have in your party, which is really cool. You can have descendants of mermaids, or nereids, or bird people, or mole people, or lizard people. There are all sorts of them. It's pretty cool, actually, that you can have so many to play as. There's also the LP system, by the way. Whenever a character is knocked out in combat, they lose 1 LP life point. And if they completely run out of LP, then they die permanently. They're gone for good, and you've got to recruit someone new. Although there's also the automaton class that you can get through a certain side quest, and the automatons have 99 LP, so that you basically never have to worry about them dying, but you cannot control them directly. That's the interesting thing about their class. They have really good skills for all weapons and pretty good stats, but they act on their own during their turn. You can't tell them what to do. I did mention some new classes as well for the remake. I believe there are 2, that being the Diviner, which is a dark magic user, and there's a whole new set of like dark synthesized magics that you can use just for them, basically. And there's also the Ninja, who is really fun. The Ninjas have pretty solid speed stats and things, and they're also good with like great swords, martial arts, and bows. I highly recommend trying out the martial arts in this game, by the way, either from the martial artist class or the ninja class. They're really fun. They have some really cool techs, and if you've got some good speed and stamina and stuff going, they are surprisingly extremely powerful. Another really nice thing about the remake is the music. The music in this game is really good. It is some solid JRPG music. There's a lot of it, from the nice relaxing town themes to the battle themes and of course the dungeon exploration themes. There's a lot of different music to be had here, and it's all really good stuff, and it has the original soundtrack from the 1993 game in it as well. You just go to the options menu and you can switch in real time, and it'll even play the song for the current area when you switch it, so you can directly compare the two and just switch back and forth, which is a super cool little feature. And that will be the game. It is a very non-linear adventure where you kind of make your own story for your own empire with your own characters and your own priorities as to which quests to go to and which dungeons to clear and which people to recruit and all that good stuff. It's a really cool experience. I'm very glad that this remake has allowed me to actually play this game, because I feel, as someone that loves classic JRPGs, missing out on a game like this would be a real shame. So this has already done its job for me, right? It's a remake that got me to play something that I otherwise haven't played before, and it's a really enjoyable game. I have put about 40 hours into it, and I'm still not quite done with my first playthrough, so it is relatively long, and it's got a lot of content, so that's definitely a good thing. I 100% recommend this game to anyone that's a fan of JRPGs or classic RPGs, and honestly, I think it's got enough quality of life in it for new school RPG lovers too. You know, you can fast travel, for instance, and there are lots of save points and stamina restoration points at the ends of dungeons and things just to help you out a little bit, but not make things too easy. And overall, it's just an extremely competent, really well-made remake of a game that I'm glad I finally got to go back and enjoy, even if it's in a newly remade form, because it's super cool and it's very unlike a lot of other JRPGs. It's definitely a unique feeling game, and to be fair, it's a unique feeling game is something that you could say about most Saga games. They tend to be unusual JRPGs, but this one in particular, I can see why they decided to remake it, because there's a lot that's special here, a lot that's really interesting and neat, and I'm definitely glad that it received such a faithful and well-made remake like this. So I'll put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for Romancing Saga 2 if you wish to check it out yourselves. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.